All right, just to recap from where we translated at the end of last week. In Sicily, there lived the Cyclopes, giants, tall and rough, or rough and tall giants, who had one eye apiece. They feared the laws neither of gods nor of men, giving the sense that the Cyclopes were outside the law. And let me go ahead and ask, are there any laws amongst human beings in the ancient world of Ulysses / Odysseus? Yes. In historical Rome, yes. In the 450s BC, there were the 12 tables. But in the time period when the journey homewards of Odysseus is set, anybody know um, when tradition reports that Aeneas journeyed to Troy and Ulysses / Odysseus journeyed home? Shortly after the destruction of Troy, which according to ancient tradition happened in the year 1184 BC. I'm surprised I didn't teach you that first semester and expect you to remember it. Charles says, what? First semester? Okay, Mino can remember that far back. Yes, me can. Okay. 1184 BC. This is in the heroic age. There are very few laws. There are no international laws. There is no Rome. Rome is not yet a twinkle in Mars's eye because he's not looking at Rhea Silvia yet. Okay, he's not about to father Romulus and Remus for another 400 years. The only law that exists is either A, the law of the jungle, or B, the law of anybody? Hospitality. There is a tradition within the ancient Greek and Roman world, okay, that as people are traveling outside their home communities, there is one law which protects people in that role of a traveler, and that is the law of hospitality. And that law essentially states, if you come peacefully to the home of a stranger and you offer that stranger gifts, okay, that stranger will offer you gifts in return and may not harm you. And you may not harm him. And 3 generations later, when that stranger's descendants are traveling and there is still no unified government or unified control of the ancient world, okay, and that stranger's descendant shows up at your doorstep, okay, your descendants would have a tradition of hospitality with that individual and would welcome that individual, shower him in gifts, in confidence that you would not be harmed by your guest and that you, well, would not do harm to your guest as well. This is a very ancient concept in the ancient Greek world. If you're ever in Western Civ, it should be talked about. I don't know that it does get talked about. Whoops. Where's my ink? Why don't I have ink? There we go. This concept in Greek of xenia. Xenia means hospitality. It's a bond between people who are strangers, not to do harm to each other while they are in each other's homes. And yes, that will be on the test. And yes, 1184 BC is a good date to review because we are backtracking to the story of the heroic age and the aftermath of the Trojan War. I don't know, I wasn't there. All right, so I want you guys to stop being passive. Every day, every once in a while, you guys show splendid bursts of awesomeness, okay? Like this test, okay? Don't look at the name. Just look at that 73 out of 80 on this test. That was awesome. I randomly pull another test out of the batch. I have no idea whose it is. Ooh, 79 out of 80. I randomly pull a third test out of the batch. No name. 49 out of 80. Not so awesome. And then randomly pull another one out of the stack. Oops. Anyway, So random bursts of awesomeness are great, but they're no substitute for total dedication to awesomeness, which is what eager students show. And I'm going to get back to the story. We're at Ulixes cum paucis militibus. And why? Shadia is an eager volunteer. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. Right. Ulysses sought grain in this place with a few soldiers. Questions so far? Okay. Just to set the stage quickly, Ulysses still has multiple ships with him, traveling back to his homeland. And what's Ulysses' homeland? Ithaca, the island of Ithaca. I'm glad you retained that from the translation you did last week. Okay. Yes, that will be on the test, the final. Right. He still has several ships worth of men returning from Troy with him. And one of the things that is not well documented in this version of the story is that while Ulysses was seeking grain and food, he didn't come without a gift. In the ties of hospitality, if you show up, unless you are a beggar, okay, and there's a slightly different set of rules that protects beggars. They don't need to bring gifts. Unless you are a beggar, if you show up at somebody's house with a gift, they are to welcome you and to give gifts to you in return. That is one of the unwritten laws of men that Ulysses is counting on here. Okay. All right, he shows up looking for grain, but he brings a gift. Does anybody know what he brings from having read the Odyssey before? Wine. Okay. Okay. Not like Charles when he doesn't get the high score in science, or Joey when he doesn't get the high score in Latin. Okay. Okay. All right. Anyway, let's push on. Let's not personalize this. I'll be quiet. Maxime? Excellent. Okay. They found a large cave or a great cave which contained a big supply or abundance of grain. Okay. Now again, not to slow us down too much, but there are some elements in this story which are not well told in Latin for Americans. One of the big details that they change just for the sake of vocabulary is that they make the Cyclops farmers. They make them farmers and say that in their caves the Cyclopes have grain. But they're not farmers. Farming is a fairly advanced cultural activity. What is a precursor to farming? Shepherding. Okay. That is to say, tending of flocks, whether it's sheep or cows or llamas or llamas or alpaca. Okay. These guys, the Cyclopes, shepherd sheep. Okay. And so the cave contains not large amounts of grain, but large amounts of, no, the sheep are all out in the pasture. Cheese, yes. Okay. Now, rather than giving you a vocab note in the textbook, kaseos, kasei, the masculine noun that means cheese. By the way, we do our Roman food unit next year in October. Looking forward to that. Any derivatives from kaseos? What? Augustine? Casein, which is the protein that makes cheese. Okay. Yep. What? As in Spanish word for cheese, queso? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And also the English word cheese. Okay. Okay. Those of you who are fans of Wallace and Gromit know Wallace's fondness for cheese. All right. So what I'm trying to do is use Latin for Americans as a kind of basic version of the story of Ulysses. It's not the best version. Okay? And based on what I know from having read Homer's Odyssey, I try to supplement it in a way that will help make sense when either A, we watch the video of the Odyssey. Ooh, video? Usually that causes a murmur. And B, when you guys try to, how do I want to say this? Try to tell me the importance of the story. But I'm getting off topic. I'm going to go back to translation. We're going to do nothing but translate. All right, we're at Tom. Ignati, go for it. It's pretty good, except Waynit doesn't quite mean come upon. It's not the same as in Waynit, meaning came upon or find or found. And then what about the case of these words? I know Kuklops is a little bit hard to judge the case of. It's a lovely third declension noun. But all three of these words are actually nominative. In other words, the Cyclops called Polyphemus is the subject. Well, it's the subject. Polyphemus is doing the action of Waynit. What does Waynit mean? Yeah, in the past tense. And this is almost one of those sentences where even though it's in Latin word order, you can translate it into English with no change of order. Then, or what if we drop the he and enforced a little bit of old-fashioned English word order? Then came, then came the Cyclops named Polyphemus. All right, questions in there? Jake, question? Oh, okay. Well, let's make it fresh volunteer opportunity. And so, Rosa, awesome. Excellent. Okay. And he is, again, Polyphemus. He is a shepherd, which is something I was laying the groundwork for a little bit earlier, and Owen helped with that process, and he drove the sheep into the cave. And like many shepherds, Polyphemus penned his sheep in during the night. All right. Tiberi, go for it. Okay, I want to be a little bit more precise on Clamawit. It's not just saying, it's... Sorry. Yeah, I hope I covered the microphone well enough on that one. Yeah, so one more time. Okay, super picky Latin teacher wants you to, excellent, to see quo as an interrogative adjective modifying loco. Because I can imagine on the final exam, ooh, he keeps mentioning that. Is that, what, 3 weeks away? Almost 3 weeks away. Giving you a question word and asking you, is quo an IP, an IA, or an RP? Okay, and or asking you what's the best translation of quo? Where, what, which, who cares? Okay, anyway, from what place do you come? Onward. Athena. Yes. I wouldn't take it quite as who are your men, because Estes is not a they are subject, it's a you are. Okay. And crazy Latin teacher, that's me, thinks you should translate this as an interrogative adjective describing homonyms. No, it's not a yes or no question. Guys, the carryover from lesson to lesson is a good thing. And if you're not carrying over from lesson to lesson, that's doomed for the final. And I won't use the final word again. It's an interrogative adjective. Translated as what or which? Yeah. What men are you, or which men are you? Okay. Are you Greeks? Are you Hungarians? Are you Botswanans? Are you the tasty kind, or are you the yucky kind? Okay. Do you have raspberry filling inside of you? Or are you stuffed with lemons? That explains your sour disposition back there. Okay. All right. So, yeah, what men are you? Sounds like something straight out of Monty Python. Jacoba. That is correct. What do you seek? Ulixes responded, nos graeci sumus. Why? If I don't call on you, you're going to have a fit, aren't you? Okay. So, Katharina. Bring in the lead into it with it. Yes, excellent. Okay. Ulysses or Odysseus responded, we are Greeks. Okay. All right. And now, Luki, go for it. That's right. I am called nobody. What? Saving Nemo for you? Okay. No, you can find Nemo in any number of Latin sentences, but what I was saving for you was the lovely passive verb, appellor, which you translated smoothly. I am called Nemo. Now, what trait is Ulysses / Odysseus known for? What traits maybe? There might be more than one. Yeah, trickery or cleverness. If you view it as a negative thing, it's trickery and deception. If you view it as a positive thing, it's cleverness and resourcefulness. Okay. There are a couple other traits that Ulysses is known for along the way, and we'll find out about them. But one of his traits is that slyness / trickery / cleverness that allows him to see that he's not in a safe place. When you're not in a safe place, the last thing you want to do is share information about yourself. Okay? I was going to personalize it, but I won't do that. Okay. All right. So I am called Nemo, or no one, or no man, or nobody. Okay. And it depends on how you pronounce it. Nobody doesn't sound so. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. A couple more on this side of the room. Angela. Yep. We seek your help. Okay. All right. Next sentence. It's kind of a real mouthful. Kaiser? That's correct. Polyphemus took and ate 2 men. Then he fell asleep. Kind of like, many hungry people at Thanksgiving, they overeat and then take a nap. Okay. All right. What's missing in here in the story in Latin for Americans is the discussion of how Ulysses offers Polyphemus wine, okay, to open up the door to a hospitable relationship between them. But Polyphemus ignores the laws of hospitality. As it said up above, he feared the laws neither of gods nor of men. And his response was to keep eating Odysseus's cruise. Okay? crewmen, excuse me. All right, onwards. Okay, Katharina. Yep. Okay, I'm going to give a quick repeat on that. I'm going to tweak the order just a little bit because that's going to help us bring in the relative clause that follows. Okay. So the remaining Greeks with a stake. You guys know what a stake is? Think a thin tree, a sapling like those out there, cut at the base. The base is sharpened. Okay. The base is roasted and hardened over the coals of Polyphemus's fire until it is both hardened by the heat and glowing hot. And then imagine Ulysses' men climbing up above a cliff ledge over Polyphemus's head and conjure the lovely sizzling sound. Okay, so they pressed with a stake the eye of Polyphemus. One more time, Katharina, keep going. Who shouted and summoned or called his allies, right? And his allies would be his fellow Cyclopes, his brothers. Okay. All right, now, again, a detail that's missing in the story of Polyphemus is this. Ryan, you're locked in a cave, okay? Well, I don't want to say you're locked in a cave. You're in a cave. A gigantic one-eyed beast has just eaten 2 of your crewmen. He's fallen asleep. What is your response? Flee. Okay. Flee is the logical response. Why doesn't Odysseus flee? Okay. Cynthia? Yeah. The textbook kind of relies on the illustration and doesn't do a really very good job of it. Actually, yeah, it doesn't do a good job at all with the illustration. Noting the fact that when Polyphemus brought the sheep into the cave, he rolled a gigantic rock in front of the cave door from the inside to seal it off so the sheep couldn't get out. That also meant that Ulysses couldn't get out. He couldn't get out, his surviving crewmen couldn't get out. And so the option of flight was not an option at all. What's the second option? That's kind of hard because even with a big brute like Polyphemus, tricking a big brute is not always as easy as it looks. Okay. Well, what would you do if you were not a thoughtful person? What would your effort be? Yeah, to kill Polyphemus might be the second option that people consider. Okay, why not take the stake and poke him through the belly with it, or try to pierce his rib cage, and so on. Yeah, this is gruesome. Okay? And the answer is because if you kill Polyphemus, there's no one to roll away the rock, and you'll die trapped inside. Okay? And so one of the aspects of Ulysses/Odysseus's cleverness resides in what you guys are reading as something that's obvious, but to me it's not obvious. Blind Polyphemus. After all, you don't have to poke him twice, do you? Okay. He can't see you. He's eventually going to wake up, especially if you stick a hot, sizzling stick in his eye. And he's going to eventually have to open the cave. But before that happens, when he's still inside the cave, he calls his brothers, who somehow cure him. And onward. Okay. Guy, go for it. Yep. Quiste vulneravit. Well, Flaminia. That's true. That's correct. Well, hold on. Who wounded you is kind of a continuation of what the allies asked. So what is it they ask? Who wounded you? It'd be helpful if this were punctuated with new paragraphs. Okay. Onwards. Polyphemus replied, nobody wounded me. Okay, it's one of the lamer tricks really out there, but on the other hand, this is in the era before well, all kinds of different riddles and so on. But when Polyphemus replies "nemo" or "no one" or "nobody wounded me," the Cyclopes hear it as saying, "I'm not wounded at all. I'm just having a bad dream," or something like that. They hear what Polyphemus says. They don't realize that there's someone in the cave named Nemo. After all, why would there be anyone in the cave? Cyclopes Island doesn't normally get visitors. All right. Etaque reliqui Cyclopes discaserunt. Athena. Yeah, exactly. And so the remaining Cyclopes departed. Okay. All right, onwards. Some very quiet people. Let's see. Can't call on JB because he's not here. Mars, you haven't translated yet. We're at Polyphemus, Graecos petiuit, sed non invenit, quod sub ovibus legati e spelunca excesserant. What's your first instinct as to where to go next after Polyphemus? Yeah, good. And how did you translate it? No, it's not Pono. It's Peto, Petera, Petiwi, which means seek. Yeah, although I don't think we've got asking going on. It's more like seeking something, looking for. Hmm. Let's go back to the original meaning for quad that we learned back in the day. Polyphemus looked for the Greeks but did not find them. Hmm. Say that one more time. This is a little bit tough. Legati is a P cubed, a perfect passive participle from a verb you guys don't know yet. It means to buy or not to buy, to bind, to tie, or to fasten. And it's a nominative plural P cubed describing the they subject of excesserant. So we can employ the cookie cutter translation. Because having been tied beneath the sheep, they... No, what's ex cato? To go out or depart. They had departed from the cave, right? Okay. So again, Latin for Americans is being a little scanty on detail on this. After Polyphemus is wounded, he calls his brothers. They show up. They leave when they don't get a sensible answer from him. Okay. Polyphemus hears his sheep bleating with great discomfort because the sheep are hungry, okay, and they're thirsty, and they really want to get out. And so, as a good shepherd, but a bad host, Polyphemus rolls the rock away from the entrance of the cave so that the sheep can go out. And as they're leaving, and the illustration in the textbook tries to show this, he tries to feel for the sheep, feel for the Greeks to see that they don't sneak out along with the sheep. What Ulysses had done was to tie all of his men underneath 3 sheep apiece. While Polyphemus was bellowing and searching for them, he quickly bound 3 sheep together, okay, and tied the sleeping Jake Pot underneath the 3 sheep, okay, so that the 3 sheep would each carry out 1 man, and that left Ulysses himself as the last man out of the cave. And instead of tying himself beneath the sheep, he just chose the biggest ram of Polyphemus's flock and climbed under it and wrapped his legs around its back and held on to its fleece to get out of the cave. Okay. All right. So, liberati, everyone. P cubed. Having been freed, they hastened to the ships, and there they found safety, kind of, sort of. Okay. All right, questions there? All right. What other trait of Ulysses/Odysseus can you get from this story? There's cleverness. Yes? He's kind of cocky? How so? Oh, well, yeah, but that's not part of the story yet. Come back to that. Yes? He is courageous, and he's dedicated to the safety of his men. He's dedicated to the responsibility of getting his men back home safely. So that even in the land of the Lotus Eaters, when they go off and don't really care anymore about getting back home, he fetches them. Make sure that they get taken back to the ship and that they leave the land of the Lotus Eaters behind. In the Cyclops cave, he is the last one to leave the cave, and he makes sure that his men get out safely. So, dedicated to saving the lives of his men, it's going to be some irony that when he finally gets home, Ulysses is all alone. All his men have died. Okay. But not because of anything that Ulysses has done. All right, that cockiness that you mentioned, Luki, where does that show up? What does Ulysses say once they're safely aboard their ships? Okay. Well, in fact, rather than saying nobody was here, yes, he does taunt the Cyclops and say, you should have been hospitable. We approached you with gifts, and your response was to kill our men and then drink our wine, consume the gift. Then he says, it wasn't nobody who harmed you. It was I, Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca. Okay. When anyone asks who wounded you, shout my name. And that bold boast is what causes the rest of the difficulties for Ulysses' homeward journey. It's not directly responsible for killing his men, but it's directly responsible for causing a 10-year delay in Ulysses' return home. Because when Polyphemus hears the name of Ulysses/Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca, when Polyphemus is asked by his father, Poseidon, who did this to you, Polyphemus is able to answer truthfully, and Poseidon holds this gigantic grudge against Ulysses/Odysseus and does everything he can to kill Odysseus or delay his homecoming for the longest time possible. Does that sound kind of familiar? Yeah, it sounds like Juno's vengeance towards Aeneas. And as I tried to talk to you guys about this in first semester with the Aeneid, a lot of it is built upon or built in imitation of Homer's stories, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Okay, we know the story of Aeneas first and better than we know the story of Odysseus, but it's important to know that in the ancient world, it was the story of Odysseus which came first and which Virgil chose to imitate. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause this.